Hey guys, NanMan here, hanging out with sleeping kitties, as you can see, hanging out right there. Yep, Atticus. So, been a little bit since we did a modern meta breakdown. We did some standard meta breakdown. What? Standard? I know. So if you guys missed out on those videos, you guys can check them out. We did Ramen Up Red, we did the Sultai Energy to kind of start things off, but we've been doing the modern meta breakdown stuff for a while now. And there was a sweet tribal deck that got first place at the Classic in DC, I believe it was. So figure we've been holding off talking about it for a little bit. Wanted to get some experience playing against it. Wanted to see it in action a little bit more before I talked about it. But I know a lot of people have mentioned it before, talked about it. It's gone through some changes and iterations to what it is now. But it's a pretty powerful deck. And there's a reason why it got first place. So I figure, why not jump into it and talk about it. Also, for those that might have missed it, Modern Magic Mondays is back. So if you guys want to see weekly Modern coverage, head over twitch.tv and youtube.com/Modern Magic Mondays. Every Monday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, we do 4 to 5 rounds of Modern coverage for you guys to be able to enjoy. A very competitive shop there with lots of the top tier decks to expect. At least week in, week out. So the deck, humans, right? Tribal based deck. People have been trying to make it work for a little while. Couldn't quite figure out where it needs to be at. I think people have kind of found the sweet spot for it. So we're going to hop in, talk about the deck, talk about how it works, what's the best way to make it to, win or beat it, that sort of stuff. So, bam, here we go. Get going with it. So I figured starting out with the champion of the parish, like that makes the most sense, right? Let's talk about this guy. He's pretty sweet. 1/1 for 1. Whenever another human enters the battlefield, you get to put a +1 counter on him. So every other creature in this deck, guys, is a human, by the way. So it's very easy for you to be able to sit here and make him really large really quickly. Now, with Fatal Push running around, he's, cost 1, so it's easy to push him off a cliff. But besides that, you're really hoping to play a champion on turn 1, you're really hoping to play a noble on turn 1, or an Aether Vial on turn 1. So for those that maybe, Infect isn't as popular now, maybe you're not as familiar with Noble, maybe you haven't seen any core decks lately, Noble Hierarch is a 1 green 0/1 creature, the human druid, again, human, can tap for a green, white, or blue, and it's got that whole exalted ability. So whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1. So works well if you are trying to go sort of a Pierce style, and we'll talk about the ability that this deck has to try to do that. So you do also kind of able to accelerate out and be able to play maybe one of your creatures a little bit earlier by having Noble Hierarch available. So those are like our hopeful turn 1 plays, right? That's what we're hoping to get. Now we do have some lords that we're going to talk about. Blam. Heading back up, Thalia's Lieutenant and our Mayor. So Mayor, as you might expect, as the lords go, other humans you control get +1/+1. Cool. Now it does have that whole flip ability that will turn into a werewolf, and then it buffs up wolves and werewolves. But we don't really care about that, right? That's not what we care about. We care about the human buffing. So that is going to be sitting in there for that go wide strategy. We'll make all of our guys bigger, right? We'll do that sort of strategy. Thalia's Lieutenant, I classify it as a lord. It's not technically a lord, but it's sweet, right? Costs 2 mana for a 1/1. When Thalia's Lieutenant enters the battlefield, you put a +1 counter on each other human. Again, the deck is full of humans, so everything's going to get counters on it. You're going wide, you can just start swinging in with everything. Whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, you put a +1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. So just like Champion of the Parish, you can make Thalia's Lieutenant and Champion of the Parish really big really quickly. All right, so that combination works out well. So those are the creatures there that you have to think about if you're facing against this deck. These are the ones that can get ridiculously large. They are the ones that they're going to be trying to pierce with the exception of the evasive creatures, and we'll talk about them in a bit. Okay, so we have that in there as a way to go about things. Of course, you've also got some hateful stuff. Our Thalia. Okay, we've got double Thalia in here. Guardian of Thraben, Heretic Cathar. You know, those ladies hanging out there. I really like the Heretic. She's pretty sweet. A 3/2 first strike. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponent control enter the battlefield tapped. So if you're going for this creature-based strategy and your idea is to swing in at your opponent, when they're trying to play a blocker, oh no, sorry, that has to enter tapped. You don't get a block with it this turn, and I get to sneak in for some more damage. So that's really nice. And then, oh, the whole deck has 36 creatures. So non-creature spells, don't care about. I have 4 non-creature spells, but I'm sure your deck is full of them. So we're going to be running this lovely lady here. 2/1 first strike, non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. So there's our kind of hateful stuff that's hanging out in there. Now we've got some other interactions. We've got some evasion. We've also got another hateful that you can essentially lock out creatures out of this game. Of course, I'm referring to our Reflector Mage, Meddling Mage combo going on here. So for those that might not have played Standard during that kind of collected company fun, quote unquote, Reflector Mage costs 3 for a 2/3. When this human wizard enters the battlefield, you get a return target creature an opponent controls to their hand. They can't cast that spell or spells in the same name as that until your next turn. So it takes them an extra turn. They cannot recast that. Now if you play Meddling Mage to follow it up, Meddling Mage comes into play, name a non-land card. The name card can't be played. So you can just say, oh, you are playing against Infect or something like that. You can bounce their Blighted Agent or Glistener Elf, and then you can play Meddling Mage, and they can't play that. You can be playing against Death Shadow or something, and you say, here's my Reflector Mage. I'm going to bounce your Death Shadow, and now I'm going to play Meddling Mage, and you cannot play Death Shadow. Like, there's some shenanigans that you can be able to do with that, right? So there are some ways you can lock people out of being able to play creatures. Definitely a annoying way to go about it, but you can see there's 4 Meddling Mage, 3 Reflector Mage in here. Reflector Mage, of course, does cost 3. Most of the list is sitting around that 2 mana. Now, we do have another sort of interactive card, if you will, that does interact with our opponent, what they're doing. And let me get rid of these. It's our Ixalan Pirate. Kitesail Freebooter here. A 1/2 with flying, so there's our evasion. So if we kind of say, hey, you're gummed up on the ground, we can't swing in, we've tried to go wide for a little bit, not really making it work, but I can play this Kitesail Freebooter here, then I can maybe follow it up with Thalia's Lieutenant, right? Make my guys a little bit bigger. I have a Noble out, so now I'm even getting an Exalted trigger off it, and I can just kind of poke you to death with this flyer. So you can kind of adjust your strategy on the fly. But so Kitesail is kind of our, I can take a look at your hand and steal something from it, right? 1/2 flying. When he enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-creature, non-land card from it, exile that card until Kitesail Freebooter leaves the battlefield. So you can get that card back. There is that little stipulation. That is a thing that can happen. When it enters, you can respond to the trigger and say, okay, I'm going to respond to the trigger and I will kill your guy. So you can look at my hand, see what I have in my hand, but you're not going to be able to keep anything. You can do things like that, just for everybody knowing. The other evasive creature that we've got, for those that watch Modern Magic Mondays, you know it's one of Brett's favorites. It's Mantis Rider, our 3/3 human monk, who is costing blue, red, and white. Okay, Jeskai colors, 3/3 flying, vigilance, haste. So as soon as you play it, you can start swinging in. Now you can play this as early on turn 2 if you do happen to have that Noble Hierarch out, right? The other thing though is the lands for this. We don't have any steam vents, right? We're not running any stomping grounds. There's no red source in that sense, but we have, of course, our tribal style lands to help us cast that sort of stuff. There's also Aether Vial. Now you can see most of the list is running 2 mana cost creatures. Mantis Rider, Reflector Mage are our 3 mana creatures. Everything else is 2 or 1. For the main board at least. So this is kind of the good idea of what the deck can do. There are, of course, flexibility. Some people I know have opted for some main board stuff that's in the sideboard. They like it in the main board, and just, you can try that out. Do what works best for you, how you like this deck. The deck is really designed to go for this go wide strategy. Can go Pierce. It's got Disruption with the Kite Sail Freebooter, with Reflector Mage, Meddling Mage. It can mess with you a lot. So it does have that sort of aspect to it, but because it's that go wide strategy for the most part, it can lose to those like Anger of the Gods, those Wrath effects, things like that you might be holding on to. Those do work really well. I mean, Chalice of the Void really hoses on the deck if you can be able to say, all right, I'll put it down on turn 1, Chalice on 1, can't let you have your Aether Vial, stuff like that. Now, guess what? If you're trying to say, oh, I'll put a Chalice on 2 to try to get around this guy, he'll never be able to cast a creature, well, he'll be able to vial stuff in. And he can be able to cast creatures because he happens to have a Cavern of Souls in here. Whole play set, you cannot counter the creatures that are cast with this. And you need these mana-fixing lands that are affecting by creatures. So Cavern of Souls, there's a whole play set in here. Ancient Ziggurat, spend any amount of mana that you'd want. You can say, I'll tap it for a red, green, black, orange, whatever color I want, but I can only cast creature spells with that. So that's in there. We've also got our new Unclaimed Territory. Again, choose that creature type. You can add a mana of any color. Basically, it's the same thing as Cavern of Souls, except the creatures can still be countered. Of course, we do have that kind of singleton Hallowed Fountain. We've got that singleton Temple Garden. We've got 3 Windswept Heats, makes sense. That's hanging out in here. We've got a single Plains here, and then 2 Horizon Canopy. Really, the only red from this deck is the Mantis Rider. Everything else is essentially banned, right? But it is like a 4-color list because you have Mantis Rider in there. Doesn't matter as much. The lands, only 20. You can see it's fine with being able to sack this to draw a card because majority of the creatures are 2 mana, 1 mana. It's not that big a deal. You have 4 Aether Vials, so you will be able to cast all your creatures pretty easily. Really, the thing that you have to worry about is that Wrath effects to kind of take you out. That's the main thing that's going to hose on the deck, and you have to be able to rely on those pure strategies of like the Champion, the Mantis Riders, things like that to kind of get there. Thalia's Lieutenant is also a nice one. Sideboard, again, pretty much full of creatures. Now, again, I did say there were some changes some people have been trying out since some of the stuff that I've seen. Like, some people have opted for the Dark Confidant in the main board there. They really like that sort of style because, hey, you know what? I'll lose a life, I'll lose 2 life, maybe 3 at the most. That's fine, but I get to refill my hand, because that's the other thing with this deck is you can see there's no draw effects, right? There's nothing that says, oh, I get to draw a card. It's really just, I need to play this creature, get this out of my hand, and start swinging at you. I'm just coming at you. You know, I can do some interactions. I've got some different lines, but I'm really just trying to kill you with regular damage. The other thing with the deck, there are a lot of lines with like Meddling Mage, Reflector Mage, Kite Sail. There's triggers that you have to remember. You have to remember your Champion of the Parish triggers. You have to remember your Thalia's Lieutenant triggers. There's a lot going on in this deck that you need to be aware of. So Dark Confidant is one that people have tried to add in. So that is a nice one. We've also got an additional Reflector Mage in there. Tireless Tracker. That's kind of a way to kind of draw cards. You know, get some mana. Alright, cool. Get a clue then. Here's another mana or another land. Get another clue. Sweet. Can work pretty well in some grindy matchups. You've got some removal style stuff in here. Is it Static Caster? Works great. Hey, I'm playing against something with 1 toughness. I'm playing against tokens. You know, I've got a way to just kind of ping things off. This is great. Fiend Hunter's also in here. Exiles a creature. Seems great. We've also got our Aethersworn Canonist. Guess what? You can only cast 1 spell a turn, essentially. Then we've got some other sweet ones here. So we've got our Renegades, which again a 3-cost 3/2 comes into play, destroy target artifact. That seems good. I mean, there's also other ways you can go about it, but again, that human aspect is really what matters, and that's what they're going for with this. Is like, okay, what humans exist that I can be able to use? Mirror Crusader is basically saying, hey, Death Shadow, you're not going to be messing with me. I'm going to be able to be here. If you're sitting there with your Tassiger, if you're sitting there with your Gurmag Anglers, I don't care. You're not getting through me, right? I've got this guy, and I can make him really big. I can sit here and say, hey, here's my Thalia's Lieutenant to put a counter on him. Cool. Now I'm going to swing in. Oh, Exalted Trigger. All right. 4/4 double strike. Good luck. Otherwise, 2/2 double strike is still pretty good. And the other one is our Xanther Necromancer. So this is the way to kind of combat the board wipes that the deck has, right? He says, hey, I'm a 2/2 human wizard. I'm a Necromancer. What do you want from me? But whenever the Necromancer or another human dies, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. So you basically say, oh, you're going to rely on your Wrath of God, your Supreme Verdict, your Damnation. Not going to work. I'm going to just get zombies to replace them. Sorry. Now, does get hosed by Anger of the Gods, does get hosed by Settle the Wreckage, Path to Exile, things like that, your creatures aren't dying, they're being exiled. But that is a nice kind of protection, if you will. So, if you are going to pick the deck up, and the creatures and stuff like that in the list have started to go up in price a little bit because of how powerful the deck is, and it's pretty cool strategies that you can go. There are a lot of lines in this, a lot more than a lot of people expect. And again, there are that little bit of flex spots that you might be able to go for. Like, that is something to think about. Oop. If I could only press the right thing that I was thinking of. There we go. Bam. Bam. So there are a couple of things, like the different lines that you need to keep track of, and the, again, counters, what needs to get a counter on it, how are you going to do those sort of interactions. So a lot more goes into it than you'd expect. Just play with it a little bit more. I think you'll have fun with it if you like this sort of style that is like that go wide strategy. If I need to just play a bunch of guys, you like creature strategies, you like tribal decks, and you're like, well, I don't want to play Merfolk right now. Blue-green Merfolk's pretty sweet, which we will be talking about soon, don't worry. But I want something different. I really love playing Thalia, right? But I don't want to play a Death and Taxes list. What can I do? Or I really love messing with people with Meddling Mage. What can I do? Or I like Mantis Rider. He's sweet, right? Look at, he's riding a bug. Whatever it might be. Try it out, guys. Let me know what you think. Also, if there are other decks that I have not mentioned, haven't talked about yet, don't worry, I'll get to them. But please leave a comment. Let me know what other decks you guys would like to see if you haven't seen them. We'll get around to it. There's standard decks, modern decks, whatever. Let me know. We'll be able to get it discussing. Again, if you like these videos, please, please, please hit the follows, subscribes, all that kind of good stuff. You can check out all of my other projects that I'm working on in the description. Other ways to help support me on the sort of content that I'm producing. Of course, Modern Magic Mondays. That would be great if you guys could check out our weekly coverage that we do for Modern. But we're going to start doing some streaming for other games. Maybe a little bit of WoW stuff, since I'm trying some different WoW challenges. Did a little bit of the Iron Man stuff. I'm trying that Project 70 stuff now. Just doing all kinds of things. And I figured if I'm going to be playing games anyway, I might as well do a little bit of streaming of it. So that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next game.